Welcome to NextLabs Expert Q&A Series. This series was designed to inform you of relevant cybersecurity topics via expert knowledge.
Welcome back to the NextLabs Cybersecurity Expert Series. In this episode, we have our guest, Maria Teigeiro, a solutions architect, joining us to discuss how the role of firewalls in data security has evolved over time. Now, she will introduce herself before we move into the Q&A.
My name is Maria Teigeiro. I've been in the security industry for over 25 years now, helping customers secure their environment and respond to changes in technology and how security needs to adapt to the changes in technology.
Thank you for your introduction, Maria. Now, let's move into the Q&A. Where do firewalls come from and how were they created?
So firewalls came from routers. In the early days of the internet, everybody had routers to connect servers to each other. And over time, what they realized is some security was necessary. There were some places that you didn't want everybody to get into. So they created filters on these routers. And what they did is they would define which IP addresses they would allow to go to which other IP addresses. As things progressed and the internet grew, they got a little bit more sophisticated, and so these filters then started to be source IP address, source port number, destination IP address, destination port number, and then the action, which was either drop or allow. In the early days of the internet, every service was a different TCP or UDP port number, right? So we had SNMP was UDP ports number 161 and 162. Mail was SMTP was port TCP 25. So every service was its own port. As things progressed, we developed firewalls. And firewalls were designed with the idea of it's okay to pause because we're going to examine the traffic that is coming through and apply some security logic to it. So these firewalls were cognizant of the TCP state. Was this a connection that was open, or was it not one that should be open anymore? And then they also developed some intelligence around the traffic and understanding what are the valid commands. So firewalls were built for security and with the understanding of the different protocols that were going through the firewalls.
Thanks, Maria. So how have things changed since the days of early firewalls?
So as I was saying, we had these firewalls, and these firewalls were built around the concept of source IP address, source port number, destination IP address, destination port number. Of course, as the internet grew, those lists got extremely long. And there were companies that I worked with that literally had 50,000 entries in their firewall policy. We then got a little bit more sophisticated and started using this concept of zones. And zones was great because we had the trust zone, which was the inside, the things that we trusted, and then the untrust zone, which was the things the outside that we didn't trust. And then there was a DMZ, or a demilitarized zone, that was kind of like the gray area between those two zones. Unfortunately, as we progressed in our technology, so do the bad guys, right? And so malware started becoming more sophisticated. Things were able to move side to side. And so the idea of zones wasn't very useful. Beyond that, there's the fact that, these days, everything's writing over port 80 or 443, right? So it's HTTP traffic or encrypted traffic, TLS traffic that we really don't have very much visibility into. So if you look at the policy, you would just see everything would be source address, destination address, and everything would be port 80 or port 443. So that's not very effective anymore. So what we've started doing is we've started hanging all of these other things off of the firewalls, a secure web gateway that would do some URL filtering. We would hang a proxy to proxy the port 80 connections. We would have a secure email gateway to do some email inspection. So firewalls really started getting a little bit less useful.
Great insights on how things changed since the days of early firewalls. So, where do firewalls work and fail in today's architecture, and do we even still need them?
In today's day, we have firewalls with a lot of other ancillary devices hanging off to provide specialized services. Do I think firewalls are still useful? Absolutely. You still need to lock the front door. You still need some sense of what you're allowing in and out. However, we need to look at things through a different lens. The concept of source IP address, destination IP address allowed doesn't work as much anymore. Everything's URLs. And so the same IP address may have dozens and hundreds and thousands of URLs that are hanging off of it. And that might be some of the things that we may want to restrict access to. So from that perspective, firewalls are not as valuable. The other thing is that most of the traffic is encrypted. Encrypted traffic is very expensive computationally to inspect. So we start wondering, does it make sense to use that kind of a model anymore? At the end of the day, if you look at things today, there are HIPAA fines, there are PCI fines. So if we look at security through the lens of what do we want to protect, and we start with the data. So a data-centric security model is really saying, let's start with the data that we want to secure, determine the policies that apply to it, and then look at security through that lens as opposed to what are we going to allow access to and what are we going to not allow access to.
Thank you for the insights, Maria. For our final question, how do you use zero trust and data-centric security to extend firewall security?
When you start with the data and you start securing things in that way, you understand that there's a need for a zero trust model, right? So a zero trust model is saying we're not going to implicitly allow things. Going back to our earlier discussion of early firewalls where there was zones and we would just allow everybody in one zone, and recognizing that that's just not appropriate, be it because malware can traverse laterally and infect things in there, or also even recognizing that different items of data require different levels of access. So when you start with a data-centric security model and you combine that with the concepts of zero trust and taking away this implicit trust model, you really start going to a more sophisticated environment where we can define policy based on data which is allowed to move and where it is allowed to move and which users have access to the data that exists.
Thank you so much, Maria. We truly appreciate your insights today. This concludes episode 8, How the Role of Firewalls in Data Security Has Evolved Over Time. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for episode 9 where we will have more insights from a new expert.